Hello, my fellow 007 fans. How you guys doing? This is Alan, and welcome to my brand new, updated James Bond film ranking video, which now includes the latest James Bond movie, No Time to Die, released in 2021. This is my personal ranking of the 25 James Bond movies, from Dr. No in 1962 to No Time to Die in 2021. Before I begin the film ranking video, I just want to say that this list is subjective, okay? This is simply my personal opinion of the James Bond films. If you disagree with me about my personal ranking of the James Bond films, that's perfectly fine. You don't have to agree with me. You can like whatever you want to like. You can dislike whatever you want to dislike. But just be mature about it, okay? There's no need to get nasty. Everybody's entitled to their personal opinions. You, me, and everybody. So if you disagree with me about the way I rank the James Bond movies, that's fine, but please be mature about it, okay? It's just my personal opinion. So, having said that, without further ado, here's now my brand new James Bond film ranking video, beginning with the Bond movie that I put all the way down at the bottom at number 25.
Meeting you with a view to a kill.
At number 25 on my James Bond film ranking list is A View to a Kill from 1985, the seventh and final James Bond movie for Roger Moore as 007. Now, I do acknowledge that A View to a Kill definitely has its share of fans, especially those who really like Roger Moore. If you like A View to a Kill, that's great, but I don't. I'm sorry. This is a James Bond movie that, even from the first time I saw it back in 1985, I've just never liked it. In my opinion, Roger Moore, he was 57 years old when he did A View to a Kill. He's way too old now to be playing James Bond, and he looks it. When I watch A View to a Kill, I see a very tired, old Roger Moore doing one Bond movie too many. I don't like the villain, Max Zorin, played by Christopher Walken, even though Christopher Walken is a wonderfully talented actor, as we all know, but his villain is just a jerk. He's a slimeball, and he's a murderous slimeball. The scene where him and a henchman are mowing down everybody in the mine shaft with their Uzis, I find very offensive. I don't like the Bond girls in A View to a Kill either. Although Tanya Roberts is a very beautiful woman, hey, she's a former Charlie's Angel. What more needs to be said? Of course she's a very beautiful woman, but she plays a stereotypical damsel in distress Bond girl. James, save me! James! And she spends the whole movie doing that. Oh, James, oh, James, oh, James! The other Bond girl, of course, is Grace Jones, playing Max Zorin's henchwoman, Mayday. But my thing about Grace Jones is that I just think she's a little too creepy. She's a little too butch. She's a very muscular woman, and she has, a very androgynous look, very short haircut, and not the most feminine looking woman, and I just think she's too butch to be a Bond girl. And then we've got that scene where she gets in bed with Roger Moore, and oh God, it's awful. It's a very silly James Bond movie. I don't particularly care for the action or adventure in it. The action scenes fail to impress me. I don't know, it's the Bond movie that gives me the least amount of pleasure. So what else can I say? Like I said, I acknowledge A View to a Kill has its share of fans, but A View to a Kill doesn't do much for me.
Yeah, I'm open. I wanna walk you back. I jump in the water. I look in your eyes.
At number 24 is Quantum of Solace, released in 2008, the second James Bond movie for Daniel Craig. Quantum of Solace, unfortunately, was made during a time when there was a writer's strike going on in Hollywood, and the script for this movie was a total rush job. You can tell quite plainly that the screenwriters of Quantum of Solace were hastily writing this script, because if the screenwriters didn't turn in the script before the writer's strike went into effect, then Quantum of Solace couldn't have been shot at all. And apparently when they did finally turn in the script, they turned it in like 2 hours before the writer's strike went into effect, and the script wasn't finished anyway. Most of it was there, but not all of it. And so apparently there were some scenes in the movie where Daniel Craig and director Mark Forster had to improvise dialogue or write dialogue that wasn't there. A lot of this movie was definitely made on the fly, and I just think the movie was made very sloppy. Mark Forster, I think, was totally the wrong choice as a director. He's not a James Bond fan. The only reason why Forster agreed to direct Quantum of Solace is because he did, in fact, like Casino Royale, Daniel Craig's first Bond movie, but Mark Forster is not a lifelong James Bond fan who's seen all the Bond movies and he likes James Bond. He's not a Bond fan, so I think right there he was the wrong choice. The action scenes in this movie are cut so damn quickly. I mean, that opening car chase at Quantum of Solace is like, whoa, 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 whoa. I don't know what the hell's going on in that opening car chase. And another thing that I don't like about Quantum of Solace is that it makes James Bond very unlikable. Bond is just a thug. He's basically a one-man demolition derby, just killing anybody within his sights. I mean, bad guys, of course, but he's killing them very ruthlessly. That scene where he kills a bad guy in a hotel room by stabbing him in the leg, in that one artery in your leg you never want to be shot or stabbed in. It goes on a little too long. It's a little too grim. I just don't like that. I don't like the fact that that Bond's not allowed to have a romantic dalliance with the main Bond girl in this movie, played by Olga Kurylenko. The movie is much too short, too. It's about 1 hour and 46 minutes. That's too short for a Bond movie. Way too short. You know, stuff happens in this movie that makes no sense. I still can't figure out how Bond managed to beat the crap out of 3 thugs in the elevator. I mean, there's 3 of them. There's only 1 of him. They're in a tight space. How did he beat up all 3 of them? I mean, watching that scene several times now, I still can't figure it out. And the fact that when he goes into the elevator with the 3 thugs, his boss, M, played by Judi Dench, is against him. You know, she's taken away his license to kill. Bond beats the crap out of the thugs in the elevator. He comes out of the elevator, and now M's on his side again. What? I don't get that. The bad guy in this film, Dominic Green, he's a total sissy. Don't talk to me like I am stupid. And then when he takes the axe to attack Bond at the end of the movie, you know, he's the worst villain by far in Daniel Craig's Bond era. No question about that. The only redeeming thing in Quantum of Solace for me really is Daniel Craig himself. Daniel Craig is not to blame. He's trying very hard to carry this movie, and he manages to carry it just. But what a damn shame that he got saddled with this horribly written, horribly directed, horribly edited film that makes Bond totally unlikable. The Quantum of Solace for me is just a totally joyless, unpleasant Bond movie. At number 23 is Die Another Day, released in 2002, the final James Bond movie for Pierce Brosnan as 007. Die Another Day is easily the worst Bond film from Pierce Brosnan's era. I feel so bad for Pierce Brosnan that he had to go out with this one, but Die Another Day, in the end, it turns out to be not so much a James Bond movie as a James Bond spoof movie. I mean, they're spoofing James Bond in Die Another Day, and very, very badly, if I do say so myself. What really makes me mad is that Die Another Day is supposed to represent the 40th anniversary of James Bond, because Die Another Day came out in 2002. 40th anniversary of James Bond, and what they came up with here is a movie so relentlessly dumb and so relentlessly silly. Constant references, references all throughout the movie. James Bond's past. Look, here's Rosa Kleb's spiked shoe from Russia with Love. Look, here's the jetpack from Thunderball. Look, here's the parachute with the Union Jack from Spy Who Loved Me. Look, here's the rotating mirrors from The Man with the Golden Gun. Look, here's a scene where Bond picks a grape out of a grape bowl and eats it. That's from Thunderball. Look, here's a scene where Bond has the book about birds that Ian Fleming got the name James Bond from. And on and on and on and on. And of course, cheesy puns all through the friggin' movie. You know, Saved by the Bell, I've been known to keep my tip up, I don't like cockfights, and then the worst one between the 2 Bond girls at the Ice Palace. Bond's just been discussing his Big Bang Theory. Yes, I think I got the thrust of it. Looks like your friends have bailed. I mean, it goes on and on and on, and it doesn't stop. This script is horrible. I don't think Pierce Brosnan himself is to blame for the disaster that is Die Another Day, but I mean, he's just got saddled with a horrible, horrible script that basically lampoons James Bond rather than celebrates James Bond. The movie in general doesn't work. The only thing that saves Die Another Day for me is that, okay, I'll admit, there's like 2 or 3 good action scenes in it. I do think that the car fight on the ice between Bond and the henchman Zhao, that is a lot of fun. That is well done. I like that. The sword fight, you know, the fencing fight between Bond and Gustav Graves, that's good. That's well choreographed. I like that. But other than that, Die Another Day stinks. This is easily the worst film in Pierce Brosnan's era. And like I said, it's not so much a James Bond movie as a spoof of James Bond. And it's a Bond movie that's just totally at war with itself. And it's just a mess.
There's just no time to die.
At number 22 is the latest James Bond movie, No Time to Die, starring Daniel Craig in his fifth and final movie as James Bond. Folks, I really wanted to love No Time to Die. I mean, for goodness sake, this is Daniel Craig's final Bond movie. It follows a big 6 years after his previous Bond film, Spectre, from 2015. The film was also delayed for about a year and a half thanks to the COVID-19 pandemic. I really, really wanted to love No Time to Die. And for most of the way, I thought it was really good. Daniel Craig is in fine form. The supporting cast is great. Great action scenes. The story is very intriguing. The film is very well shot. It's definitely a much better made movie than, say, Quantum of Solace, insofar as the quality of the filmmaking, okay? So everything was going fine. I was in it to win it. And then the ending. That goddamn ending where they killed James Bond. Yeah, James Bond basically sacrifices himself in order to save the world and in order to save his lady love, Madeline, and their daughter, because it turns out Bond has become a daddy since the last time we saw him. Yeah, Bond sacrifices himself, and basically he gets blown up by nuclear missiles. You know, the filmmakers want us to believe that this was a very respectful way for Daniel Craig to go out as Bond. No, it wasn't! It was about as disrespectful could be. You know, James Bond doesn't die in his movies, okay? I mean, James Bond, as my friend Jack the Film Fanatic said on his channel, James Bond is a survivor. James Bond is supposed to kill the bad guys, get the girl, and save the day. That's what James Bond does. James Bond is not supposed to die in any of his movies. This was bullshit. And yet, the filmmakers, including producers Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson, they have no shame whatsoever about what they've done. They think this was a wonderful, glorious way to send out Daniel Craig as James Bond. No, it wasn't. You don't kill James Bond. Yeah, okay, they're going to bring back James Bond next time with a brand new actor playing Bond, and he'll be on a completely different timeline in a completely different universe, and James Bond will return, but it's not the same anymore. Never in all my life have I ever seen a James Bond movie that was doing so well only to trip on the finish line and fall flat on its face. I left the theater angry and cheated, and I say to the filmmakers of No Time to Die, shame on you. No Time to Die is not the worst James Bond movie ever. It is a better made Bond film than, say, Quantum of Solace, but man, oh man, they disappointed the shit out of me with this one. And that's why No Time to Die lands on my chart at number 22.
You used to say, live and let live.
At number 21 is Live and Let Die, the debut Bond movie for Roger Moore. Came out in 1973. Now, again, I acknowledge that Live and Let Die definitely has its share of fans. Some Bond fans love Live and Let Die, but I don't. I've got several issues with Live and Let Die. First of all, Roger Moore himself, even though I think Roger Moore definitely got better in the role of 007 as time went on. In fact, I think he nailed the part perfectly fine with the next movie, The Man with the Golden Gun. But for his first time out as James Bond 007, I just thought Roger Moore was a little too stiff, a little too wooden, a little too clean cut, you know, the kind of guy who, you know, didn't want to get his suit dirty, you know. And I just didn't buy him as James Bond his first time out of the gate. But like I said, he will get better in the role. He will grow into the role quite wonderfully, starting with the second movie of his, The Man with the Golden Gun. I also didn't like the fact that in Live and Let Die, they put James Bond in a blaxploitation adventure, really, you know, blaxploitation movies that were popular in the early 70s, like Shaft and Black Caesar, and, you know, anything that starred Pam Grier, or Sweetback's Badass Song, you know, Superfly. And it's like they decided to put James Bond right in the middle of a blaxploitation adventure, and with all due respect to the blaxploitation era of films, and I like some of them very much, my favorite blaxploitation film, I guess I'd have to say, is Shaft,
with Richard Roundtree, who's the black private dick that's a sex machine to all the chicks. Shaft! Can you dig it? I like Shaft. I'm totally down with Shaft. But anyway, to put Roger Moore, stiff Roger Moore, in the middle of a blaxploitation adventure, for me, just didn't work. Bond being sent to Harlem for an adventure just doesn't work for me. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. Live and Let Die also has a very dark tone to it, with voodoo and black magic, and again, for me, that was kind of a turnoff. Yaphet Kotto as Kananga, the villain in this movie, he's not given all that much substantial stuff to do. I do, however, like Teehee, the henchman with the pincer arms, the metal pincer arms. He's a very good henchman. I like him very much. But overall, I think Live and Let Die is a very dated Bond movie, and again, Bond in a blaxploitation adventure for me doesn't work. I didn't like J.W. Pepper, who's obviously the comic relief of this movie, Sheriff J.W. Pepper, who's constantly, chewing tobacco and spitting the tobacco. Really gets disgusting after a while, and I don't find him particularly funny either, I have to admit. But what I do think works in Live and Let Die, of course, the classic Bond theme by Paul McCartney. I like the boat chase. The boat chase, I thought, in Live and Let Die is done very well. I love Jane Seymour as Solitaire. She's a terrific Bond girl, so, she definitely makes a big impression on me in this movie. So Jane Seymour, she's great. But it's just not enough. I just think, for me, Live and Let Die is a very dark, dreary Bond film. So Live and Let Die, I rank on my James Bond movie chart at number 21.
Diamonds are forever.
At number 20 is Diamonds Are Forever, the sixth and final official James Bond movie for Sean Connery from 1971. I mean, there was also from 1983 Never Say Never Again, but that's not a part of the official James Bond movie series. I refuse to acknowledge Never Say Never Again. It's just a pointless remake of Thunderball anyway, so never mind Never Say Never Again. Diamonds Are Forever is the last official appearance of Sean Connery as James Bond 007, released in 1971. Diamonds Are Forever, it's okay. It's for me, it's a mediocre James Bond movie. There's some stuff in it that I like, but there's stuff in it that I don't like. And even though Sean Connery is my personal favorite James Bond, and it's nice that Sean Connery came back after a one-film hiatus to do Diamonds Are Forever, he pretty much just did it for the money. Not because he really, really, really wanted to play James Bond again. He did it for the money. After George Lazenby didn't quite work out in his one and only Bond film on Her Majesty's Secret Service in 1969, the film studio were desperate to get Sean Connery back at any cost, and so they made Sean Connery an offer he couldn't refuse. They offered him a then record $1.25 million, which of course these days is no big deal, but in 1971 it was a big deal. $1.25 million to do Diamonds Are Forever, and they would also finance for Connery 2 film projects of his choice. Anything he wanted to do. Like I said, I love Sean Connery as 007. He is my favorite 007 for sure. But in Diamonds Are Forever, he's older now. He's put on weight. He's not quite the classy Sean Connery James Bond from the first 4 movies he did, from Dr. No through to Thunderball, and to a somewhat lesser extent to his 5th movie, You Only Live Twice. It's nice to have him there, but not the greatest performance, and he's not given the greatest of films to do, not the greatest of James Bond film scripts. Another problem that I have with Diamonds Are Forever is that it's much too silly. They amp up the comedy in Diamonds Are Forever, and this is the kind of James Bond movie that I think would have suited Roger Moore a hell of a lot better than Sean Connery. Connery just seems out of place in Diamonds Are Forever. He really does. He just doesn't seem to fit it all that well. Don't care much for Charles Gray as Blofeld. I think he's a little too foppish, and then there's that scene where they put him in drag. Blofeld in drag. So that's what the cat dragged in, huh? Or whatever that line is. And also, let's see, Jill St. John as the main Bond girl. I mean, yeah, she's beautiful. She rocks the bikini, but her Bond girl is just plain dumb. Just a dumb broad, and in my opinion, and she becomes too much of a bimbo, a bikini-clad bimbo towards the end of the movie. The climax at the oil rig on the ocean, not exciting in the slightest, very badly staged. I do think that the car chase in Las Vegas, that's well done. The elevator fight that Sean Connery gets to do with a heavy, that's well done. And Bond's pursuit of Blofeld at the beginning of the movie for killing his wife in On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Yeah, that whole opening sequence with Connery looking for Blofeld, that's good. But the overall feeling about Diamonds Are Forever is that it's just mediocre. It's just okay. Some parts of it I like, some of it I don't. And it's just not a Bond movie that I go rushing back to all that much. So average Bond movie, Diamonds Are Forever, and I rank it at number 20.
Got a license to kill.
At number 19 is License to Kill from 1989. This is the second and final Bond movie to star Timothy Dalton as 007. And License to Kill, again, it's a mediocre Bond movie. There's stuff in it that I like, there's stuff in it that I don't like. I do think Timothy Dalton himself is very good in this movie, but what I don't like about License to Kill is its violent nature. This is a very needlessly violent 007 film. License to Kill has often been said to be like the James Bond version of Miami Vice, because, I mean, Bond's going up against a drug lord. This takes place in 1989. Everybody's wearing late 80s Miami Vice style clothing, and like a Miami Vice episode going up against a drug lord, it's also just a very ugly Bond film. It really is. I mean, there's a lot of deaths in this movie. If somebody dies by decompression, meaning his whole body goes pop into a big bloody mess. Somebody gets taken off screen to have their heart cut out. We don't actually see that on the screen, but they're getting taken off screen to have that done. Another person dies by having a forklift stabbed through them. Another character falls into a rock grinder machine. I mean, this is a really, really nasty, ugly, needlessly violent Bond movie. It's a little too gritty. It's a little too violent for its own good. Oh, and of course, James Bond's pal Felix Leiter gets maimed by a shark. He gets his leg, chopped off by the shark. So yeah, again, it's just a very ugly Bond movie. Not particularly pleasant to sit through, but like I said, Timothy Dalton, he is very good, very, dark and morose in the part, but it seems to suit his character, and it seems to suit the adventure that he's going through in this particular film. But, he's still very good. He still has a lot of presence, a lot of command, although he's got a horrible haircut in License to Kill. I mean, he's got a haircut that makes him look like a bad guy, but yet he's the good guy. But Timothy Dalton, nonetheless, he is very good in the role of 007 here in License to Kill. Oh, I do think that the truck chase, the tanker truck chase, which actually reminds me of that old Steven Spielberg classic film Duel, is very well done. I think the bar fight is good. I think the beginning of the movie with the stunt involving the airplane, and Bond being lowered on a crane, and in order to trap Sanchez in his airplane, to put a hook on Sanchez's airplane, that's well done too. So I mean, License to Kill isn't without its entertainment value, and it has its moments. And yes, Timothy Dalton, he is good as 007, but again, overall, my main beef with License to Kill is that it's just too dark, it's too gritty, it's too violent, just not a very particularly pleasant Bond film. So I can only say it's a average, mediocre Bond film at best, and I rank License to Kill at number 19.
You only live twice.
At number 18 is You Only Live Twice, released in 1967. This is the fifth James Bond movie for Sean Connery. Last time around, You Only Live Twice was ranked at number 17. This time around, You Only Live Twice slips a notch to number 18.
You Only Live Twice, yeah, this is a good, fun, entertaining Bond movie. This is the Bond movie that sends 007 to Japan for an adventure in which he goes up against Blofeld in his volcano base set. His very expensive volcano base set, if I must have you know. Sean Connery, this is the stuff of legend that Sean Connery hated making You Only Live Twice because he hated the way the Japanese press were treating him during the making of this movie. I mean, they even followed him into the men's room in order to try and keep an interview going with him on one famous occasion, in which case Connery totally exploded in anger at them to get the hell out of the men's room. And yeah, I think it kind of shows in Connery's performance that he does look really bored in this movie. I mean, just the scenes where he's flying Little Nelly and he's just not really giving a shit about his acting. He's just, okay, I'll turn over here, and all right, now I'll turn over here and press some buttons, and I mean, hey, Sean Connery, he's my favorite James Bond, God bless him, but you can tell quite plainly that Connery's not digging this particular Bond movie. It's an okay, run-of-the-mill kind of Bond movie as far as plots go. They're really amping up the gadgets with You Only Live Twice, and the fact that they're trying to throw in bigger money and bigger sets and bigger production values and bigger everything. And overall, it's fun and it's entertaining, but like I said, it's just not that deep a Bond film. It's just Bond going on another mission. Donald Pleasance makes an appearance as Blofeld. He's the first on-screen Blofeld, the first of, I guess, 4 on-screen Blofelds, not counting For Your Eyes Only, where we never really got to see Blofeld's face. But, yeah, Donald Pleasance, he was a great actor, no question about it. He was a very talented actor, but the fact that Donald Pleasance's Blofeld was the template for Mike Myers' spoof character of Dr. Evil in the Austin Powers movies, I think pretty much tells you that Donald Pleasance really wasn't that much of a threat to Sean Connery in this movie. The volcano base set is really impressive. The big action scene with the ninjas that come to help Bond, that's impressive. Some people criticize the little gyrocopter, little Nelly. It's fun. It's a fun little gadget. It's a fun little action scene where little Nellie's taking on the enemy fighters in the sky. Yeah, that's kind of fun, even though Connery looks bored as shit. But, okay, yeah, You Only Live Twice. It has some good action scenes in it. It's got great Japanese locales. I love the cinematography on the film. Great theme song by Nancy Sinatra, one of my all-time favorite James Bond themes. So there's definitely some fun, entertaining things to be had in You Only Live Twice. It's not the greatest of Bond films, but it's certainly not the worst.
The world is not enough.
At number 17 is The World Is Not Enough, released in 1999, and this is the 3rd James Bond movie for Pierce Brosnan. Last time around, I ranked The World Is Not Enough at number 18. This time around, The World Is Not Enough moves up 1 notch to number 17.
And overall, The World Is Not Enough, I think, is a lot of fun. It's not the greatest of Bond movies, but it's certainly not the worst either. And I do think that there's enough there in The World Is Not Enough that is very entertaining, all things considered. Pierce Brosnan, he is very good as Bond in this movie. The opening chase on the River Thames with the 2 speedboats is terrific. I think that's one of my all-time favorite action scenes in the entire Bond series. I like that a lot. Bond has a good action scene on skis. There's a good action scene in a mine shaft. I like that a lot. So there's a lot of good action scenes here. I also like Robert Carlyle as the main villain who's got the bullet in his head. Maybe the concept of that is a bit weird, but overall I think it works, and I think Robert Carlyle is a great actor, and I think he plays a great villain, even though he's not a physical menace to Bond, but intellectually. And you still don't want to mess with him. I mean, he still shoots a mean machine gun, but I do like Robert Carlyle very much as Renard. The 2 Bond girls, well, they're beautiful, but not the greatest of actresses. You've got Sophie Marceau as Electra King, French actress, very beautiful, but she doesn't speak the greatest of English. And that whole monologue she does about, the oil runs in like blood in my people's veins, and I'm going to redraw the map, and the whole world will know my name. And I didn't buy a single word she was saying. Like I said, she's beautiful, but her performance here is kind of stiff. And then, of course, you've got the other Bond girl, Denise Richards, as Christmas Jones. Denise Richards, terrible performance. She's a babe, but she's just not much of an actress, and she's basically just there for eye candy. And I'm supposed to believe that this girl is a nuclear physicist? Denise Richards is a nuclear physicist, and she also has the ability to defuse bombs. Chuckle, chuckle, snicker, snicker. Yeah, right. It's not the brightest of scripts. I also have to say that this is also the Bond movie where they're really starting to amp up the cartoonishness. They're starting to amp up the campiness in the Brosnan era. As I said in my original review of The World Is Not Enough, this is where the Pierce Brosnan era starts to go wrong for me. Mind you, starts to go wrong. I mean, wait till they get to Die Another Day. But The World Is Not Enough, it's still good.
Nobody does it better.
At number 16 is The Spy Who Loved Me, the 3rd James Bond movie starring Roger Moore. This was released in 1977. The Spy Who Loved Me is one of the most popular of all the James Bond movies. Many James Bond fans say The Spy Who Loved Me is one of the best James Bond movies ever. As for me, I like The Spy Who Loved Me. I like it very much. It's a good, fun, entertaining James Bond movie. I'm just not as crazy about it as some other Bond fans are, but nonetheless, I still like The Spy Who Loved Me. In this adventure, Bond goes up against a villain named Stromberg who has a thing for living under the sea, and basically he wants to destroy everything on land, and he wants Earth to be a planet where all life lives happily under the sea. And, well, basically Bond has to stop Stromberg naturally, and this is a good, fun adventure for 007, although a few things knock it down a peg for me, so I can't quite say that it's a great James Bond movie as some other Bond fans say it is, but I still think it's good. I'm going to be perfectly honest, I don't think that this is one of Roger Moore's best performances as Bond in The Spy Who Loved Me. He comes across in this movie as kind of stiff again, and that's kind of disappointing when you consider that in the previous Bond film, The Man with the Golden Gun, Roger Moore was just totally kicking ass as 007. I mean, he's terrific in The Man with the Golden Gun, and I'll get to that in a bit. But here in The Spy Who Loved Me, again, he just seems kind of wooden, kind of stiff. Not the best performance from Roger Moore, in my opinion, in The Spy Who Loved Me. But the supporting cast is good. Barbara Bach, of course, is a classic Bond girl. She plays Anya Amasova. She's a Russian spy who hooks up with Bond, even though Bond wound up killing her lover earlier in the movie on a ski chase. But nonetheless, they join forces, even though it's kind of a complicated situation between those two. But they somehow managed to join forces. Barbara Bach, she's gorgeous. Good actress. Besides, she gives a very good performance, and I like her and Roger Moore together in this movie. The Spy Who Loved Me is also the first appearance of Richard Kiel as Jaws, one of the most famous henchmen in the entire James Bond film franchise. The big, tall man with the big iron teeth. Yeah, Richard Kiel as Jaws makes his first appearance here in Spy Who Loved Me, and he's definitely a definitive foe to 007 in this movie, even though he gets a little comical every once in a while. I'm not too crazy about Kurt Jurgens as Stromberg, the main villain in this movie. He's not really all that much of a villain. He basically just sits at his long table and he pushes buttons and he barks orders, and he doesn't really do much of anything else. I do appreciate the action scenes in The Spy Who Loved Me. I mean, that opening ski chase with that classic jump off the cliff, in which Bond, he pops open his parachute and we see the Union Jack on the parachute. That's one of the all-time classic stunts in the history of the Bond series. There's the great chase scene where Bond and Anya are in Bond's souped-up new car, the L'Esprit car that can turn into a submarine. I definitely like the locales in this movie as well. I mean, they go to Egypt and a few other places like that. And of course, where'd they go for the ski chase? Was it the Alps? So wherever they shot the ski chase and the ski jump, yeah. Great locales there, too. So it's definitely a globe-trotting Bond adventure. So, yeah, I mean, overall, I do like The Spy Who Loved Me very much. Again, it's not one of my very favorites. I don't really think it's a great Bond movie, although I know many Bond fans do think it's great, and that's fine. No worries. But I do like it. I do think it's good. It's very good, The Spy Who Loved Me, and I rank The Spy Who Loved Me at number 16.
Comes the morning and the headlights fading away.
At number 15 is The Living Daylights, the debut Bond film for Timothy Dalton as 007, released in 1987. The Living Daylights has a very complicated plot. I couldn't even begin to tell you the plot of The Living Daylights. All I can tell you is that it involves the defection of a Russian general and drug smuggling, and Bond gets involved with that. Oh, as well as a romance with a cellist who may or may not be a sniper. There you go. That's the whole mixture of what's going on in The Living Daylights. Yes, The Living Daylights, this is a very good James Bond movie. I like this one very much, and I think this is definitely, without question, the better of the two Timothy Dalton Bond movies. Timothy Dalton is terrific in his debut as 007. He's got the cool, he's got the suave, he's definitely a nice change of pace from Roger Moore, with all due respect to Roger Moore, but yeah, Dalton's a nice change of pace. He takes the role seriously. He gets tiny little flashes of humor, but not too many. But definitely better bits of humor than he gets in the next movie, License to Kill. But there's little moments where he's kind of lighthearted. But yes, he's very good, very commanding, a very commanding presence as 007. And yes, I like Timothy Dalton in The Living Daylights very much. Also on board, you have Miriam Diabo as Cara Milivoy. She's basically the lone Bond girl in this movie, folks. She's a cellist, and she basically is Bond's love interest. She's the cellist who may or may not be a sniper, and she and Bond have a romance. The villains are not the strongest of villains in The Living Daylights, I'll admit, but nonetheless, they do what they can. I mean, okay, Jerome Crabbe as General Koskov. He's basically the Russian general who defects. He has this wonderful habit of kissing whoever he meets. Not really the most evil of villains, I guess, but he's amusing in the part. Joe Don Baker is Brad Whitaker. He's an American arms dealer, and he's got a thing for army toys, military toys. He's interesting. I'll give him that. I mean, interesting watching him play with his military toys, and then he gives Bond one last threat towards the end of the movie. I think of the Bond villains in Living Daylights, the one who stands out for me the best is Andreas Wasanewski as Nekros, who's Koskov's henchman. He's this big, muscular guy, I mean, perfectly chiseled, and there's one scene where he goes undercover as a milkman, and he has these explosive milk bottles. Takes a milk bottle, But anyway, I think of all the villains in Living Daylights, I like Nekros the best. There are indeed great action scenes in The Living Daylights. I get the opening action scene with Bond. He's like on an island and they're playing like war games, and it turns out that it's not just a game, that the games are actually deadly, and that's just in the opening of the movie. Oh, of course, they're being chased in Bond's souped up new Aston Martin car. They're being chased in the snow by the bad guys, and of course all the gadgets that are on the car. That's great. And then we see them skiing in a cello case. That's a lot of fun. So overall, The Living Daylights, despite its very confusing plot of double crosses and triple crosses and fourple crosses, overall this is a very good, very entertaining James Bond movie, and I rank The Living Daylights at number 15.
For your eyes only.
At number 14 is For Your Eyes Only.
The fifth 007 movie for Roger Moore, released in 1981. And I was actually surprised to discover recently that there are some Bond fans who don't really like For Your Eyes Only all that much. And I found that very surprising, because actually I think For Your Eyes Only is great. And I think Roger Moore himself is really good in this movie. And yeah, I like For Your Eyes Only. I like it very much. The plot of this one is that Bond is racing against the evil villain Kristatos for a device called a ATAC machine, which basically means it's a automatic targeting attack communicator. And not only that, but Bond is also helping a beautiful woman named Melina Havelock avenge the deaths of her parents at the hands of Kristatos. For Your Eyes Only, this was the follow-up to the outer space adventure Moonraker. This was the movie that literally brought Bond back to Earth. Although it has to be said, Moonraker doesn't take place exclusively in outer space. But anyway, it's basically known as the Bond movie that took Bond into space. So for Your Eyes Only, they wanted to bring Bond literally back down to Earth and give him a more realistic adventure, whereas Moonraker was more fantastical. Give Bond a more realistic adventure here, and I think overall it works really well. I think this is one of Roger Moore's best performances as 007. I think he's really giving it his all in this one, and he's very good. I like Carol Bouquet very much, the lovely Carol Bouquet as Melina Havelock, and I think she and Roger Moore have great chemistry in this. Julian Glover as Kristatos. Julian Glover, he's an actor who I admire very much. I mean, I've seen him, he did some stuff on Doctor Who. He was the villain in the third Indiana Jones movie, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. But as Kristatos, he's not the most memorable of villains. He doesn't make that big an impression. Good action scenes. There's the opening action scene where apparently it's Bond going up against Blofeld. We never actually see Blofeld's face. There's also a great action scene with a car chase where they're in Melina's cheap Volkswagen car and they're being chased in the hills. That's a lot of fun. And then finally we get to the main action scene where Bond has to climb. He has to do some very serious and very dangerous rock climbing in For Your Eyes Only. And even though we know Bond's going to make it, still it's a very nail-biting scene for me. And there's a lot of good tension in that scene as well. So overall, there's some good stuff here. The only stuff that doesn't work for me in For Your Eyes Only really is that some of those underwater scenes, it's pretty obvious that Bond and Melina are not really underwater. We get like a close-up view, and we're supposed to believe that they're underwater. Sometimes they are underwater, but then we get other close-up shots of them where it appears Roger Moore and Carol Bouquet are like behind glass, and there's a wind machine blowing at them, and there's like these fake bubbles that are supposed to simulate water. It's pretty obvious they're not underwater. I mean, that was a fake effect that doesn't work for me. But other than that, I really don't have any other complaints about For Your Eyes Only. I mean, overall, I think it's very good, very enjoyable. It's a very solid adventure for Roger Moore.
All I wanted was a sweet distraction for an hour or two.
At number 13 is Octopussy, released in 1983. This is the 6th James Bond movie for Roger Moore as James Bond.
Octopussy is a great Bond movie. I think this is definitely one of Roger Moore's best, and I think if only Roger Moore had left with Octopussy, he would have gone out on a great note, but no, he had to stick around and do A View to a Kill. Oh well. But Octopussy, great James Bond movie. Roger Moore, even though he's 55 when he did Octopussy, he just manages to get away with still looking good, performing the part well, giving it everything he's got. This is basically the Bond movie involving the Fabergé egg and some more Soviet general people and a diamond smuggler, a jewel smuggler by the name of Octopussy, played by the lovely Maud Adams, who makes a return appearance in the James Bond series, having previously appeared in The Man with the Golden Gun. Louis Jourdan as Kamal Khan. He's one of the villains in the piece. He's very good. He's obviously not a physical menace to Bond, but definitely an intellectual one. And in the immortal words of Louis Jourdan, Octopussy. Octopussy. Christina Wayburn as Magda, one of Octopussy's women. Gorgeous Swedish actress. Absolutely gorgeous. I just can't take my eyes off Christina Wayburn. I like the action scenes in this movie. There is that opening action scene involving Bond flying a private plane into a hangar and being chased. That's really good. The chase scene on I guess it's a golf cart or something like that, a high-speed golf cart through the streets of India, I think. That's really well done. Oh, all the stuff on the train. Yes, all the action scenes on the train. That's very good, very entertaining stuff. Later on, when Octopussy's women get to fight, later on at Octopussy's palace, that's really good. And then, of course, you've got the final fight in the sky on the outside of an airplane, involving great stunt work there as well. I really like Octopussy. To me, this is one of my favorite Bond movies, definitely one of my favorites from Roger Moore's era. Although I would like to know, how does a hot air balloon actually sneak up on somebody? And I would also like to know, how did James Bond manage to get out of the ape suit on the train so fast, and how did he manage to get into his clown suit and clown makeup so fast? That doesn't make any sense to me. But other than that, I have no other complaints about Octopussy. I think this Bond film is a whole lot of fun.
The man with the golden gun.
At number 12 is The Man with the Golden Gun, the 2nd James Bond movie for Roger Moore, released in 1974.
Now, The Man with the Golden Gun is a Bond movie that many James Bond fans love to hate. Many Bond fans consider Man with the Golden Gun to be one of the worst of the James Bond movies, but not me. Not me at all. I think this is a terrific James Bond movie and one of the very best of the Bond movies for Roger Moore. In fact, I say The Man with the Golden Gun features Roger Moore's very best performance ever as 007. I didn't like Roger Moore all that much in his first Bond movie, Live and Let Die. I just thought he was a little too wooden, a little too stiff, and as I said before, he was following on the heels of Sean Connery. I didn't quite buy him as James Bond his first time out. But I tell you, man, with his second movie, The Man with the Golden Gun, Roger Moore becomes James Bond. He nails it in this movie. And especially for anybody who criticizes Roger Moore as James Bond, Roger Moore is tough. in this movie. He's very tough. He takes no bullshit from anybody, and yet he's still the suave Roger Moore who's good with a quip. He still gets in a whole lot of good quips, but he's tough, man. He's tough. He has a very short temper. There's that scene where he's slapping around Maud Adams as Andrea in the hotel room to try and get information out of her. I mean, he's a Bond who, he doesn't suffer fools gladly. I think he knew that there was definitely room for him to grow as 007, that there was definitely more he could have done with the part when he did his first film, Live and Let Die. So you can see Roger Moore is giving it everything he's got, and I really think this is the very best performance Roger Moore's ever given as 007. Christopher Lee as the villain Scaramanga, he's fantastic. The man with the golden gun himself. Christopher Lee, man, again, he's got charm and suave as the villain to spare. That commanding voice that he had as Scaramanga, and of course his classic golden gun made from a cigarette lighter and a pen, a couple of cufflinks, and a few other items is a classic 007 gadget. The Bond girls are great too. Maud Adams, as I said, she will later return in Octopussy, but this is Maud Adams' first appearance in the Bond series, playing Andrea Anders, Scaramanga's girlfriend, and again, she's very good in this movie, very lovely, and she definitely holds her own against Roger Moore very well, and holds her own against Christopher Lee as his scared girlfriend. And then you've got Britt Eklund, who plays Mary Goodnight, Bond's assistant in this movie. And, Mary Goodnight, she's definitely not the sharpest tool in the shed, but she is a cutie, and man, oh man, does she look great in a bikini. Hervé Villechaize as Nick Nack, long before he was saying, the plane, Hervé Villechaize as Scaramanga's dwarf butler, Nick Nack. And he's great. He's a tiny little menace in his own way. Very good. This is a very different kind of Bond movie. It's a very personal kind of adventure for Bond. It's basically him and Scaramanga going head-to-head in this, but I think that the conflict between Bond and Scaramanga is great. The action scenes when they come in this movie are really great themselves. There's the boat chase, there's the car chase, and then of course there's that great scene where the car does the 360-degree flip in the air. I do think that there's great humor in this movie. I do like the scene where Bond wakes up at a karate school and some shenanigans happen at the karate school. I think that's funny. I love the set of the half-sunken ship, which apparently MI6 have converted into an underground base, and it's like the whole set is slanted off to one side, and it just looks really amazing. I think that's the work of set designer Ken Adams. I love The Man with the Golden Gun. I think it's one of Roger Moore's very best Bond films.
Just like the moonraker goes.
At number 11 is Moonraker, released in 1979. And this is the fourth James Bond movie for Roger Moore as 007.
Ah, yes, Moonraker. This is the Bond film that took James Bond into space. Not for the entire movie, of course, but for the concluding section of the movie. Yes, Moonraker is a very silly Bond movie, but I think it's silly in a good way. Moonraker, for me, is my favorite of the Roger Moore Bond films, even though I think Roger Moore's best performance was arguably in The Man with the Golden Gun. I think Moonraker is arguably Roger Moore's best Bond movie because I think it is arguably the most fun of the Roger Moore Bond films. However, make no mistake, Moonraker is a very cartoonish Bond movie, but here's the trick. Moonraker knows it's a cartoon. This is a Bond film that knows perfectly well it's a cartoon. It makes no apologies whatsoever for what it is. You also have to understand that I also have great nostalgic affection for Moonraker because Moonraker was my very first Bond movie. It was my introduction to the world of James Bond. Roger Moore, obviously, was my very first Bond that I ever saw. So no matter what anybody says badly about Moonraker, I'm always going to have great affection for this very silly, but in my opinion, wonderfully silly Bond movie. I think Roger Moore is very good in this movie. He's right smack in the middle of his era as 007, isn't he? He's got 3 Bond movies behind him. He's got 3 Bond movies ahead of him. So he's right in the middle of his time as Bond when he did Moonraker, and I think he's very good. Lois Chiles as Holly Goodhead. Her acting is kind of wooden, kind of stiff, I'm sorry, Lois, I gotta be honest. I don't know if what she has with Roger Moore in this movie could be described as chemistry, but I do think they make a really good pair together, Roger Moore and Lois Chiles. And let's not kid ourselves, folks. Lois Chiles is drop-dead gorgeous. Richard Kiel makes his second appearance as the henchman Jaws, and he's even funnier in this movie than he was in the previous one. I actually like Jaws better in Moonraker than I did in The Spy Who Loved Me. I'm just being totally honest with you. And then, of course, you've got Michael Lonsdale as the villain, Hugo Drax, and he just plays Hugo with total great villainous aplomb and saying stuff like, take care of Mr. Bond. See that some harm comes to him. And then, of course, when they finally go into space at the end is a lot of fun. And there's a laser battle that's like totally out of Star Wars. So yes, Moonraker, it's a total cartoonish Bond film from start to finish. But this is a Bond movie that knows it's a cartoon. And either you can enjoy watching Moonraker on the level of cartoon or you can't. I love Moonraker.
GoldenEye, his weakness.
Moving into the top 10 now, at number 10 is GoldenEye, released in 1995, starring Pierce Brosnan in his debut as the fifth James Bond.
GoldenEye, this was the first Bond movie in 6 years. This was the movie that brought back James Bond in the mid-90s with Pierce Brosnan taking over the role from Timothy Dalton. And even though I know Pierce Brosnan has his share of critics, I think Pierce Brosnan is a very good James Bond. He has his own sense of cool. He has his own sense of suave. He's probably the most cool of all the Bonds. I'm Bond, James Bond. And I'm cool. And I like that. It seems to work very well for Pierce Brosnan. Moving on, we've got Sean Bean as 006, also known as Alec Trevelyan. Sean Bean, well, if you need a bad guy for your movie, you call Sean Bean. He was born to play villains. Yeah, Sean Bean, he's terrific as 006. The two Bond girls are great. You got Isabella Scorupco as Natalia, very lovely woman, and she and Bond have a good romantic dalliance. I like her. Famke Jensen as the evil villainous Bond girl, Xenia Onatopp, who likes to crush men to death with her thighs during sex. Yeah, she's a wild one, Xenia Onatopp, but I like her very much. Jodan Baker as Jack Wade, who helps Bond on his adventure. He's good. I also have to mention Alan Cumming as Boris. He's a total riot in this movie. I am invincible! Yes, Alan Cumming, yes. He's great as the computer programmer Boris. I like him a lot. We get a brand new M in the form of Judi Dench, the one and only Judi Dench, playing M for the first time in GoldenEye. And she is a great M, if I do say so myself. The action scene with the tank in St. Peter's Square. It's a terrific action scene. I like that a lot. Then we get the later action scene on the satellite with Bond and Alec Trevelyan, also known as 006, going mano-a-mano, fighting high atop the satellite dish. It's a terrific fight scene, and I tell you again, Brosnan is terrific in the action scenes. He is. This is the movie that brought back James Bond in the 90s. I think Pierce Brosnan, in my opinion, is a very good, very solid James Bond, and I love GoldenEye. It's one of the best movies that Pierce Brosnan certainly did as 007, no question about that.
Darling, I'm killed. I'm in a puddle on the floor.
At number 9, we have Tomorrow Never Dies, released in 1997, and the second James Bond movie for Pierce Brosnan.
And in this movie, James Bond goes up against an evil media mogul named Elliot Carver, who basically wants to take over the entire world's media. And it's up to James Bond, of course, to stop him. Tomorrow Never Dies. This is a terrific James Bond movie, in my opinion, and it's also my favorite James Bond movie from the Pierce Brosnan era. I mean, I love GoldenEye. I thought GoldenEye was terrific, but I love Tomorrow Never Dies a little bit more, just a little bit more, and I think this is definitely the best James Bond movie from Pierce Brosnan. I think Brosnan himself is terrific in Tomorrow Never Dies. I mean, I liked him just fine in GoldenEye. He's very good in GoldenEye, but here in Tomorrow Never Dies, he's more assured, he's more confident, he's more relaxed, I think. And I think Pierce Brosnan, very good, charming, suave, funny, great in the action scenes. I think he's a great Bond here in Tomorrow Never Dies. I think Jonathan Pryce is a terrific villain as Elliot Carver. He's got great villainous charm to spare. I mean, he's obviously not a physical menace to 007, but he's definitely an intellectual menace. And again, Jonathan Pryce, powerful performance as Elliot Carver. As for the two Bond girls, one of them's great, one of them not so great. The not so great Bond girl is Terry Hatcher, who plays Elliot Carver's wife, Paris, who had a romantic dalliance with Bond several years ago. Terry Hatcher, you know, she's pretty, but her performance here, it's okay. I mean, she's not on screen for very long anyway. So it could be argued that the part of Paris Carver is kind of underwritten. But, you know, Terry Hatcher, I mean, she does what she can with it, but again, it's just not that great of a performance. The other Bond girl, though, I think is terrific. Michelle Yeoh as Wei Lin, a Chinese agent who helps Bond on his mission. Michelle Yeoh, of course, she's a international martial arts action star in her own right. She's often been referred to as the female Jackie Chan. As a matter of fact, she and Jackie Chan have made a few films together, including the wonderfully entertaining movie Super Cop, if you've never seen that before. Although I think in that movie, Michelle Yeoh was known as Michelle Khan. But it's the same woman, Michelle Khan, Michelle Yeoh. Anyway, Michelle Yeoh, I think she's terrific here as Wei Lin. I mean, again, she's got the great martial arts stuff down. She's got the great action stuff down. I think she and Brosnan have great chemistry. I think they make a great pair in this movie. The action scenes in this movie are terrific. I love the opening action scene with Bond at the Russian base trying to get the missile off the base with the plane. The action scene in the parking garage where Bond's driving his car by remote control in the back seat of the car, you know, and firing rockets and missiles and all of that. The action scene with the motorcycle chase. Yes, the motorcycle chase going through the streets and they're being chased by the helicopter while they're both on the motorcycle, Bond and Wei Lin. That's terrific. In fact, like, they're handcuffed as they're riding the motorcycle. That's a great action scene. So I think Tomorrow Never Dies is a terrific, wonderfully entertaining James Bond movie, and this is definitely Pierce Brosnan's best Bond film, in my opinion.
At number 8 is the biggest mover on my James Bond film ranking chart, and that's the original James Bond movie that started it all, Dr. No, released in 1962, starring Sean Connery in his debut as the original James Bond. Now, last time around, I ranked Dr. No on my James Bond chart at number 14. I've always liked Dr. No. It's not that I've never liked it. Of course I like Dr. No, but Dr. No, for me, in the past, it had always been a middle-tier kind of James Bond movie because I've always felt that Dr. No, being the first James Bond movie, it feels like the pilot episode for the James Bond film franchise. Not all of the elements are in place yet of the James Bond formula. They're still trying to figure out what the James Bond formula is. But nonetheless, in recent months, I've taken another look at Dr. No. I've watched it a few times, actually, since Sean Connery passed away at the end of October 2020. And looking at Dr. No now, I see the film in a whole new light, and I do regard it as the classic James Bond film that it really truly is, even though it's not quite perfect. Again, not all of the elements of the James Bond formula are in place. Bond has virtually no gadgets whatsoever. His only gadget, if you like, is his gun. Actually, he starts off with a Beretta, but then they change his gun, of course, to the classic James Bond gun, the Walther PPK. So Bond basically just has his gun and his wits to help him on his adventure. You know, not all the elements are in place yet, but still, what is there is a classic Bond film in its own right. It's still a great adventure. Sean Connery just oozes charisma in his debut performance as James Bond. I mean, just that very first time we see his face and he says the classic line, Bond, James Bond. Classic, absolutely classic. This is also the Bond movie that introduces us to the very first Bond girl, played by Ursula Andress as Honey Rider. And of course, that scene when she comes out of the sea in her white bikini, classic. We also get the first Bond villain, Joseph Wiseman, as Dr. No. Even though he's not on screen very much, I think he's literally only in like the last 20 minutes of the film. But when he's there, he is good. And I like the bit where he insults Bond and says to Bond, "No, you're just a stupid policeman." That's a great line. The set for his underground lair is terrific. Great set, that is, for Dr. No's lair. And, of course, this is the Bond film that introduced the Bond regular cast members from the original cast. You know, Bernard Lee as M, you know, Bond's boss. Lois Maxwell as the original Miss Moneypenny. And there's great location stuff shot in Jamaica. And it's a real entertaining James Bond adventure. I like this one a whole lot. Again, not all the elements of the James Bond formula are in place yet. I also think the concluding battle between Bond and Dr. No is over much too quickly. I mean, they throw a few punches, Dr. No falls into the nuclear water or whatever that stuff is, and that's the end of it. But still, there's definitely a lot more good here. And for the first James Bond movie ever, it is indeed a classic. And I felt that this time around, Dr. No definitely deserves a place in my personal top 10. So yeah, Dr. No moves up a big 6 notches from number 14 to land in my personal top 10 at number 8.
At number 7 is On Her Majesty's Secret Service, starring George Lazenby in his one and only James Bond movie, released in 1969. On Her Majesty's Secret Service, wow, this is a terrific James Bond movie. What I really love about On Her Majesty's Secret Service is that it takes James Bond seriously. The gadgets are pretty much left to the side in On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and this is the serious Bond. This is the movie where Bond basically has his gun and his wits for like the first time since Dr. No. And by all accounts, the movie version of On Her Majesty's Secret Service follows the original novel by Ian Fleming very closely. And we get to see Bond fall in love. He has an actual romance with a woman, he doesn't just fall in lust with her, he falls in love with her. As for George Lazenby, opinions are always going to be divided about George Lazenby. I think the 007 fan base is split right down the middle regarding George Lazenby. He was following on the heels of Sean Connery, and needless to say, that was a huge pair of shoes to fill. And the fact that George Lazenby was an unknown, he was an Australian model. He never acted in a film before. He had only starred in a commercial for beer, I think, down in Australia, I think it was. But of all the candidates who tried out for the role of James Bond to replace Sean Connery, they liked George Lazenby the best, and they gave him the part. But I like George Lazenby. I think he's a very good James Bond. Obviously, he's not Sean Connery, but I thought he played the role of Bond, with his own flair, his own style. I think he's, good looking, even though his hair is kind of lacquered. He doesn't have the best hair of all the Bonds, I have to admit, George Lazenby. But overall, good-looking guy. He looks good in the suit. He's got great brute strength. He's great in the action scenes. And I think he does the romance stuff very well with Diana Riggs. So overall, I like George Lazenby. I thought for this one movie, he was a very good James Bond. Diana Rigg as Tracy, the woman who wins James Bond's heart. Well, what needs to be said about Diana Rigg? She's a marvelously talented, classically trained British actress, and she's terrific. And she's very lovely, of course, as Tracy, very talented. She was also on The Avengers, as you know, as Emma Peel. So she's terrific. I really, really love her performance here. Another plus for On Her Majesty's Secret Service is Telly Savalas as Blofeld. I think Telly Savalas is arguably the best of the 4 Blofelds that we've gotten so far, because he takes the role seriously. He plays the role the most seriously. He's also the Blofeld who gets the most screen time of the 4 Blofelds that we've gotten. And I just think he's great. He's just a terrific presence as Blofeld, and he's definitely a great foe. The cinematography on this film is wonderful. All the stuff in the Alps, terrific. All the skiing footage is terrific. Peter Hunt's direction is solid. John Barry delivers one of the all-time greatest film scores he's ever done for a James Bond movie. Fabulous score for On Her Majesty's Secret Service. I love the story. I love the characters, the direction, the script, the cinematography, the action scenes when they come, the action scenes when Bond's being chased on skis, the beginning fight at the very top of the movie where Bond's at the beach and he's fighting the bad guys, the final bobsled chase where it's Bond versus Blofeld on the bobsled run. They're both on bobsleds and they're fighting each other. That's really great. So I really like On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Wonderfully entertaining Bond movie if you can get past the occasional slow pacing of it. But other than that, wonderful James Bond movie, and I rank On Her Majesty's Secret Service at number 7.
I'm prepared for this.
At number 6 is Spectre, released in 2015, and it stars Daniel Craig in his 4th mission as James Bond 007. Spectre. I love Spectre. I think this is a great James Bond movie. This is certainly one of the best Bond movies in Daniel Craig's era. The movie has not been getting the greatest of reviews. I think some critics have been very unfair to Spectre because this is the movie that follows up the hugely successful Skyfall, and some critics have written off Spectre by saying, well, Spectre is not as good as Skyfall, therefore Spectre sucks. Is Spectre a perfect movie? No. But Spectre, in my opinion, is still great. This is a great James Bond movie in its own right, and I think it deserves much more respect than what the critics have given it. For starters, Daniel Craig, he's terrific in his fourth go-round as 007. I mean, he's got the toughness, he's got the suave, but I also like here in Spectre that they're loosening him up a bit here. They're making him a little bit funnier. I mean, not to the extent of the Roger Moore era, or for that matter, the second half of the Pierce Brosnan era, but yeah, they're loosening him up a bit, giving him a little bit more humor, and I like that. Christoph Waltz as Blofeld. I think he's great. He doesn't get as much screen time as he could, I'll admit, but when Christoph Waltz is on screen, I think he's a great villain, and I think he's a great Blofeld. Léa Seydoux as Madeline Swan. She's the main Bond girl in this movie. I'm totally in love with Léa Seydoux. I mean, she is so gorgeous, and she's a very talented actress. I think she and Craig have great chemistry in this movie, and even though it can be argued that their love story moves a little too quickly, nonetheless, I do think that the love story that is there between them is very good. Great action scenes all over the place in Spectre. I mean, that opening tracking shot that goes on for like 4 minutes, following Bond through the streets of the Day of the Dead festival, which culminates in the action scene in the helicopter, the action scene where Bond's being chased in his new Aston Martin DB10, in which some of the gadgets don't quite work yet. I like that. The action scene in the snow where Bond is chasing after the bad guys who are holding Madeline captive, even though he's not on skis for once. He's in a plane for that action scene. That's great. All great stuff. Another criticism of this movie, I have to admit, is that there's not enough screen time given to Monica Bellucci as the second Bond girl. She plays the widow of a assassin that Bond was going up against at the beginning of the film, named Sciarra. But she only gets about, I clocked it, she only gets like about 7 minutes of screen time with Bond. That's about it. 5 to 7 minutes of screen time. That's another criticism you could probably level at Spectre, I suppose. Not enough Monica Bellucci. But overall, you know, this is a really great Bond movie. And one last bit of praise I have to give Spectre. This movie is just 2 minutes shy of 2.5 hours. I wasn't bored once. Not even once. So I think that speaks to how great Spectre certainly is to me. I think Spectre is a wonderful James Bond movie. Is it a perfect Bond movie? No, but that's okay. I still think it's a great Bond movie, and I rank Spectre at number 6.
From Russia with love.
Breaking into the top 5, From Russia with Love, the second James Bond movie starring Sean Connery as 007, released in 1963. Last time around, From Russia with Love was ranked at number 4. This time around, it slips a notch to number 5, but it is still a top 5 James Bond movie in my book.
In this adventure, Bond is basically going up against the Spectre organization to recover this encrypting device called a Lecter. So it's basically a race between Bond and Spectre for the Lecter device. From Russia with Love, this is a fantastic James Bond movie. As a matter of fact, Sean Connery himself names From Russia with Love as his personal favorite of all the Bond films that he did, and why not? It's a great Bond movie. Sean Connery is in top form here in his second go-round as 007. I also enjoyed Daniela Bianchi as the main Bond girl, Tatiana Romanova. I also enjoyed Pedro Armendáriz as Kerim Bey, Bond's contact in Istanbul, who helps Bond out on his mission. Very sad to find out that Pedro Armendáriz was actually dying of cancer when he made the film, but you'd never guess it from how he appears in the film. He appears to be in good health, although the reality was he was not in good health, but that's just great acting for you. So well done, Pedro Armendáriz. And I also enjoyed Lotte Lenya as Rosa Klebb. She's the main villainess. She's the villainess with the spiked shoe, and she's a pretty scary woman. She definitely gives a terrific performance here as the main villainess, Rosa Klebb. And I will also mention Robert Shaw, who is a classic Bond heavy in the form of Red Grant. He's huge, he's muscular, and he also has the wire that he can strangle people with. Yeah, he's a pretty scary henchman, definitely a great formidable foe for Bond. There aren't too many action scenes per se in From Russia with Love, but the ones that are there, I think, are really good. There's the fight at the gypsy camp that Bond is involved with. That's really well done. There's also the all-time classic train fight between Bond and Red Grant. Fantastic stuff. That's one of the great classic moments in the history of James Bond. And then, of course, there's the final fight, or second to last final fight, on the boat. And, firing the oil cans, making the oil cans explode. And then, of course, the final confrontation in the hotel room with Rosa Klebb. All of that is really well done. Great direction, great Russian locales, great storytelling, great script, great acting from everybody in the cast. I love From Russia with Love.
It's the kiss of death from Mr. Goldfinger.
At number 4 on my James Bond film ranking list is Goldfinger. Goldfinger, released in 1964, and the third James Bond movie for Sean Connery. Last time around, Goldfinger was ranked at number 5. This time around, it moves up a notch to number 4.
What needs to be said about Goldfinger? This is an all-time classic Bond film, no question about it. Many James Bond fans will happily rank Goldfinger at number 1. That's fine, I respect that. Goldfinger is a classic. I mean, hey, for me, it makes the top 5, so I love Goldfinger. Being that this was the third movie in the 007 franchise, this was the movie where the Bond filmmakers figured out more or less the Bond formula. I mean, Dr. No, the first Bond film, is great, but that was the first film. It was like the pilot episode of the Bond series. And then, of course, the second film, From Russia with Love, was even better. And then, of course, you get Goldfinger. But yeah, Goldfinger, it has all the hallmarks of the classic Bond film franchise. I mean, first of all, you got Sean Connery in top form as 007. He's terrific. He's got it all. He's got the suave, the charm, the bravery, the screen presence. He's got it all. Sean Connery, top form here as 007. Gert Frobe, even though he was dubbed, his voice was dubbed in the film, he's a great classic Bond villain as Goldfinger. You expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. That classic scene on the table with the laser. The Bond girls are great, although the main Bond girl, there's one main Bond girl, and that's Honor Blackman, who plays Pussy Galore. She's one of Goldfinger's henchwomen, and it's hinted at that she's a lesbian. When Bond tries to seduce her, he tries to put on the charm on Pussy Galore, and she goes, "You can turn off the charm, I'm immune." But later on, Bond and Pussy Galore have that little roll in the hay in the barn, and, well, Bond, he converts her. Way to go, Bond. Only Bond, baby. A man so sexy he can convert lesbians. And then, of course, you have Oddjob. You have the classic henchman of Oddjob, played by Harold Sakata, the henchman with the bowler hat. The deadly bowler hat, he can fling it at you and kill you because his bowler hat has a blade on it. Yeah, so watch out for Oddjob. He's a classic Bond henchman. This was the debut film for the Aston Martin DB5 with all the wonderful gadgets that it has in it. Great action scenes, the car chase in the Aston Martin, and of course the final assault on Fort Knox. That's a whole great action scene, and the whole look of Fort Knox. It's like, literally, as they've described it in documentaries, the inside of Fort Knox in this film looks like a cathedral of gold. It's just beautiful. Goldfinger, all-time classic James Bond film.
Skyfall is where we start.
At number 3, the bronze medalist of the James Bond film franchise, in my opinion, Skyfall, released in 2012 and starring Daniel Craig in his third mission as 007. And in this movie, Bond goes up against a former MI6 agent named Silva, who has turned rogue and who's also trying to kill 007's boss, M. And so it's Bond versus Silva, and Bond trying to protect his boss, M, from Silva. That's basically what's going on in Skyfall. Skyfall is a fantastic James Bond movie. This is the Bond movie where James Bond bounces right back on track after the very dismal Quantum of Solace, and Skyfall also gets Daniel Craig as Bond right back on track. Skyfall was also the Bond movie that celebrated the 50th anniversary of James Bond, and unlike the terrible Die Another Day with Pierce Brosnan, which was supposed to have celebrated the 40th anniversary of James Bond, Skyfall has very subtle references to Bond's past. They don't do what Die Another Day did, which is, to throw constantly in your face reference after reference after reference after reference to Bond's past. The references to Bond's past in Skyfall are very subtle. Like, for example, there's a scene where Bond and the villain Silva are doing target practice on Silva's girlfriend, Severin. I mean, Bond doesn't want to do it, but he's being forced by Silva to do the target practice. But anyway, both men are drinking a little bit out of a bottle of scotch. And what's the year on the bottle of scotch? 1962, the year that the first Bond movie, Dr. No, came out. So very subtle references to Bond's past. The cast of this film is fantastic. Daniel Craig, he's terrific as James Bond. Again, he's got it all, the toughness, the suave. He's also allowed to have a little bit of humor. Judi Dench as M. This is her final film as M. She's terrific. Javier Bardem as the villain Silva. He's a wonderfully brilliant, wonderfully flamboyant villain. He's very memorable. Action scenes are fantastic in this movie. The opening action scene where Bond is going up against the bad guy, I guess his name is Caprice, I think that's his name. He's chasing Caprice in the car, through the streets, then he's chasing Caprice on a motorcycle, on rooftops, and then he's chasing Caprice on a train. Fantastic action scene. And then, of course, the final confrontation, the final battle at Bond's childhood home of Skyfall is terrific. You've got a classic Oscar-winning theme song by Adele, great score by Thomas Newman, fantastic direction by Sam Mendes. Skyfall is a fantastic James Bond movie. It brought Bond back in a big way for his 50th anniversary, and rightfully so. I love Skyfall. It's a triumph for everybody involved. It's a triumph for Daniel Craig, and I rank Skyfall at number 3.
I've seen angels fall from blinding heights.
The runner-up James Bond film, in my opinion, the film that lands at a very high number 2, is Casino Royale, starring Daniel Craig in his debut film as James Bond 007. Casino Royale released in 2006. And basically, Casino Royale is a reboot of the James Bond film franchise. It resets the timeline for James Bond to the modern day, and it also resets Bond's timeline to the very beginning of his 00 career. He's just done his 2 kills that earn him his 00 status. And in this film, Bond is sent up against a terrorist banker named Le Chiffre, and he has to defeat Le Chiffre in a high-stakes poker game at Casino Royale. Casino Royale. Wow, this is a fantastic James Bond movie. This is one of the greatest James Bond movies ever made, and Casino Royale is my personal favorite James Bond movie from the Daniel Craig era. What I really love about Casino Royale is that after the cartoon mess that was Die Another Day, Casino Royale takes James Bond off that dreaded cartoon wheel and gives him a realistic, gritty James Bond adventure. The slate is like totally wiped clean with Casino Royale, and Bond's wheel is spinning anew for a whole new generation. And who better to play James Bond at this point in time than Daniel Craig? He is fantastic as James Bond. Now, Sean Connery will always be my personal favorite of the James Bonds, but Daniel Craig, definitely, in my opinion, the second best of all the Bonds, right behind Connery. I mean, he's brave, handsome, he's got the build, the screen presence, he's got everything needed to be a successful James Bond. He's got it all, and he plays the role seriously. I also love Ava Green as Vesper Lynd, the woman that Bond falls in love with in this film. She's fantastic. She's one of the greatest Bond girls that has ever been. And the fact that she's a woman with substance, and her love story with Bond is so believable, and it's so heartbreaking when it all goes wrong at the end. Mads Mikkelsen as Le Chiffre, the main villain. He's a slimeball, but he's a slimeball with charm. This villain who has a messed up eye that weeps blood, and he's just very sinister. You know, he's very cool and calculated. He's one of the best villains the James Bond series has ever had, so I love Mads Mikkelsen as Le Chiffre. Judi Dench returns as M, and even though the timeline has changed, Judi Dench is still playing M. She and Craig have great chemistry as agent and boss. You know, they have really great acting scenes together, and Judi Dench really wonderful as M. And one of the things I love love about Casino Royale is that the action scenes are done in real time. No slow motion crap. It's done in real time. The action scene where Bond's chasing a bad guy through a construction site, and the bad guy happens to know that special running skill known as Parker, where you're running and you're not letting any obstacles stand in your way, and Bond's chasing him all over the construction site. That is one of the greatest action scenes in the history of James Bond. The further action scene at the airport with the terrorist and the jet plane, when we get Bond to the casino, to this film's credit, it makes a card game, it makes a poker game exciting. It's more than just a couple of opponents sitting there with their cards and putting down a card and all of that. There's definitely mind games going on at this card game, and that's great to see. Casino Royale is a phenomenal James Bond movie. It rebooted the James Bond film franchise for the better. It made Daniel Craig a star as James Bond 007, and it is arguably my favorite James Bond film from the Daniel Craig era. It's a groundbreaking, game-changing Bond film. Fantastic Bond film, Casino Royale, and I rank Casino Royale at number 2.
So he struck like thunder.
And my personal pick for the number 1 James Bond movie of all time, Thunderball from 1965. Ding, 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 starring Sean Connery in his 4th mission as James Bond 007. So, Thunderball is my all-time favorite James Bond movie. Are you surprised? Are you shocked? What is it about Thunderball that I love the best? Well, you know, for me, it's the best. It just is. I just love it the best. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that, you know, I love underwater footage. I love anything that has to do with going under the sea. And maybe Thunderball also appeals to the child in me who grew up watching the undersea world of Jacques Cousteau. For me, Thunderball gives me everything that I want in a James Bond movie. It gives me the best of what I want in a James Bond movie. For starters, it gives me my very favorite James Bond, Sean Connery. This is Sean Connery's 4th mission as 007. I think Sean Connery is at his most comfortable here in Thunderball. I mean, in Thunderball, he plays the role of James Bond like putting on a nice, comfortable pair of shoes, you know? He's just so comfortable in the role. I love the villain, Largo, played by Adolfo Celli. Even though he gets picked on sometimes, some people don't like him because they think his eye patch is silly, but maybe he's wearing an eye patch because he lost his eye sometime in the past, you know? I think Largo is a terrific James Bond villain, and arguably, all things considered, he's my favorite Bond villain of them all, so I love Largo. I also love Thunderball for the 4 great Bond girls we got here. The lovely Claudine Auger as Domino, Luciana Paluzzi as the villainous Bond girl Fiona Volpe. You've got Molly Peters as the nurse Patricia that Bond has a dalliance with at the health clinic. She's great. And finally, you've got Martine Bestwick as Paula, Bond's assistant in Nassau. She's wonderful too. Another lovely lady. They're all lovely ladies, all 4 of them. I love the locales in this film. The photography is great. The locales that are in Nassau and elsewhere. I love the underwater footage. The underwater footage does not bore me in the slightest. Thunderball's detractors say the underwater footage is boring. The underwater footage, not boring to me. Not boring to me in the slightest. I love the underwater footage in this film and the underwater action that takes place. I think it's great. I really do. I don't find the pacing of the film boring either. I think the pacing of this film is wonderful. The pacing is as it should be. Thunderball also sports a classic Bond theme by Tom Jones. Thunderball! Great stuff by Tom Jones. And of course, a classic film score by John Barry. I mean, this is a fantastic film score that John Barry came up with. I love Thunderball because I just do. It's the Bond movie that gives me everything I could ever want in a Bond film and so much more. It gives me my favorite James Bond, Sean Connery. It gives me my favorite villain, Largo. It gives me my favorite Bond girl. In fact, it gives me my favorite set of Bond girls. All 4 Bond girls in this film are wonderful. Terrence Young's direction is terrific. The cinematography on this film is terrific. I love the underwater footage and the underwater action. Some people find that underwater action stuff boring. I don't. I'm excited by it. I'm entertained by it. I love it. So there you go in a nutshell, folks. I love Thunderball. Thunderball is my favorite James Bond movie of all time, and I rank Thunderball, naturally, at number 1. Thunderball, my favorite James Bond movie.
And there you have it, folks. That's how I personally rank the James Bond movies. And whether you agree with me or disagree with me, I hope you enjoyed the video. So, until next time, this is Alan. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to subscribe down below. and long live James Bond 007.